Hey, this is Rev, and if you haven't been living under a rock for the past few years, you'll probably have noticed an explosion in these type of doors here. This is a 10x10 door I made a few years ago, and it uses these Slimeless flying machines. This technology has allowed for doors to get much more compact over the past few years, and also have much faster opening times compared to the pre-observer counterparts. I'm going to show you it opening right now, and as you can see, this whole apparatus here will push the door blocks all the way down, then will return back up to the top. So just like that. Then we just have a simple tape here, which hides all the pistons. So in this video, we're going to go over how to build them, how they work, some easy implementations of them, some more advanced concepts and other uses, and then I'll have a live demonstration of me attempting to build a door with them that you can follow along. So, with these flying machines, there are two main versions of them, and they both have their advantages and disadvantages. So they both start off the same with a normal piston facing down, and a sticky piston facing up. Then you have an observer here. This one is facing to the side, and then two more facing down. You'll have a block, a sticky piston, and a normal piston facing up after that. So that's one version of it. The other one, again, starts off the same, like this, but then after this second observer, you want to have a trapdoor. This can't be a note block, it has to be a trapdoor. A second observer, or a third observer, here this one facing down, and then a sticky piston and a normal piston facing up. And both of these work in the same way, however, they do have advantages and disadvantages. The problem with this one is, if you have a line here trying to power this piston worm as it gets down to this level, it'll start, if you accidentally power it and it powers this trapdoor, it'll mess up the flying machine. And the problem with this one, the disadvantage to this one here, is that any blocks that are placed in any of these locations next to it will be powered by this block here, which is powered by the observers. And so there are different cases for when you want to use these. However, this one here is much more popular and much more widely used. You'll also see in some doors that they mixed them. This one uses the one with the trapdoor here, where it uses the other version with two observers facing down in a block here for all the others. This is just a personal preference thing, as using normal blocks is usually cheaper than using a trapdoor and also create less noise from the opening and closing of the trapdoor. However, it does need this type here because of this piston here, which can't be powered by the flying machine. So in order to get these to work, what you're going to do is, for extension, you want to first long power the top block, or the top piston. This has to be at least a 7 tick or 14 game tick pulse. And after that, you just have to retract the bottom piston in any way. Pulse length doesn't matter. Notice again, you want to do a long pulse at the top, and then you just power the bottom piston to retract the piston down. And you can just keep doing that to get the thing down to the level you want. Then when you want to have it return back up, you just have to short power the top piston here, and it'll automatically return back up to the top. Same thing with the trapdoor based one, 7 tick pulse up here. Then power the piston down here to pull the other one down. And then you just keep doing it like that. And once again, when you want to send it back up, just one ticket, or give it a short pulse, and it'll automatically return back to the top. Just like that. Early doors which implement this concept would do so using piston tape here, 2 observers that would be pushed down for opening, and 4 tick repeaters and observers here. So this 4 tick repeater would give a long pulse in addition to this redstone line here, a long enough pulse to the top piston, and then when this turned off, the observer would detect it giving a short pulse to the bottom piston. And as the observers were pushed down to stack, it would power these repeaters on the way down as the flying machines were turned down. While that previous strategy did work, the one disadvantage is that it was quite large. As you can see, we have to add an extra 3 layers onto this side of the door instead of just 1. So a more efficient, size-efficient way was discovered of just spamming the lines with observer clocks. So as you can see here, this door, there's just an observer clock right here, powering all these lines rapidly. As you can see, it will power and have it pushed all the way down to the bottom. So all you have to do to get this concept to work is make some inputs for this top piston worm here and connect it up to observer clocks like this, and then just activate the clocks and spam the inputs. This will cause the thing to extend down. While this is quite easy to do, there are some problems that are faced when expanding this. So as you can see, if you want the flying machine to extend really far down, you need a lot of inputs down the side. However, and these are all connected up to observer clocks. However, when I power this, you'll see that it gets stuck like that. And this is because this line here is powering too early, powering this piston right here, which extends and retracts at the same time as this one here, since all the lines power at the same time, which makes it so this one up here is unable to extend. So, the fix for this is to keep these lines here disabled until you need them. So until the pistons come down to this area where these lines actually are used to power them, you want to keep them disabled so they can't power anything. So if I start with the redstone dust here turned off, and I connect them as I go down, you'll see that the machine fully pushes down to this level here, which is the lowest it can go. So there are several ways in order to power these lower lines later. One way is to just have one of these lines up here power this one down here, just with a bunch of delay added. However, this can get quite large, so an easier way to do it would be to hook up a separate observer clock to the lower lines here and have it power after a certain amount of time. So an example of that would be what I did in my 10x10. So we have this top line here, which powers this dropper, which removes items from the dropper here and puts them into this hopper faster than the hopper can return them. So eventually when this item, or when this dropper runs out of items, this comparator will turn off, and it'll go through this observer chain, causing this piston to extend. This piston here creates a second observer clock, which powers these 3 lines down here, which will be used for the flying machines to travel all the way down without powering them at the beginning, which would mess up these pistons here. So that's enough of the basics. So now we can get on to more advanced concepts to use with these flying machines. So the main one that I'm going to cover here is how to eliminate the top row of blocks here. So if you see in the 10x10 here, we have to have a row of immovable blocks up here and a redstone line to power these top pistons. However, it's possible to remove these by using an observer slider here to power the top pistons, and an auto-stop mechanism which will stop the flying machine from going back up to the top. So the observer slider is fairly trivial. You just have to push it over once and then power the bottom line here, which will, and what that'll do is, let's get the pistons out. So all you have to do is power this once here at the top by pushing the observers over, and quickly power this here, and you want to push it back over, so this observer slider back over, so it will once again bud power this, extending it down. And you want to do that fairly quickly so the bottom pistons don't have the chance to push back up. And after that, you can start your clock, which will which will cause the flying machines to push all the way down. So if you can see here, you have the power which goes from this input piston here, it'll go up through here, and it'll power this piston here, pushing it over, as well as this line here. And on this side we have a repeater that detects it, and this goes through this chain of observers to push back everything, as well as using this toggle here to start the clock. And that will cause, this will start the flying machines on their way down. So you can just watch it right now. Okay, so when I push this button, the whole thing should start. So there. You see it pushes the observer lines over a few times, observer sliders over a few times to power these top pistons here. And then this part here will start the clock. And so that's going to finish up. Good. So the main thing I'm going to discuss is how to automatically stop the flying machines from returning back up. So here's just a normal one of the flying machines, and so I can push it down just like this here. But what I want to do in order to get to stop is I want to get an output from when the observer flying machine is going to coming back up. So I get that from this observer here facing into this block. This will power this 3-tick repeater here, which will power this top piston here, making it so this bottom one is unable to extend. So as you can see here, powers it briefly, just for a tick, and then it will stop the whole thing from coming back up. So some easy ways to implement this for this newer version of flying machine is on your redstone lines here on the second one down, you just want to have a 3-tick repeater here, which goes into the redstone line here, which powers this piston here. So I can show you. Just activate the worm a bit, so it goes down a few blocks. You see on this way up it stops like that. And the way to do that on the trapdoor based one is to have a piston here from this top line, which goes into a observer facing down, and then redstone on the line below, and this will power this trapdoor at the same time, at the right time, to interrupt the bottom worm from pushing up. So once again, I can push that down a bit. As you can see on this way up, it will lock this trapdoor open, causing this bottom part to stop. So all I have to do now is just pull these up with an extra pulse and start a tape or something to hide the pistons. So there are many ways to use these flying machines. As an example, here is a 11 high wall. Oh, shit. So there are many ways to use these flying machines. I have an example here, which is this 11 high expandable wall, which was made by me and Giga. As you see, it uses the same basic concept of having a worm up here, and then the second one down here. This one with the 2 observers, a trapdoor, another observer, and we had to use this one so it doesn't power this piston here, which would mess up the flying machine. And this one here, as you can see, right here we have an observer clock, so this observer gets pushed up and it's detected by this one here, which goes around in this chain and goes and powers all of these inputs right here. And in order to get enough delay so they don't start powering this bottom one here too early and screwing up this piston here, like on that one down there, which caused the whole flying machine to get stuck, we have a 3-tick repeater for these inputs here, which will bud power this piston here, after a while, and then we have another 4-tick repeater here, which will give us extra delay so this doesn't get powered too early. On this one, we also just put an observer here to get an input from when this thing fully returns back up to the top, as well as you have an observer here attached to this piston. This is because we actually push this bottom sticky piston down to this level where we have no inputs for it, so the only way to get an input is from an observer here. And on the way up, this will also push this top piston up, because this pusher here is so long it exceeds the push limit. So if we had to push all of this plus this piston up here, that would be 13, so we'd be unable to push it. But once again, this just uses the same concept of spamming all these inputs here to make it go down. So just to show how you can implement these and build a door of your own, I'm going to just build an example door. This will be a non-seamless 5x5 using the flying machine concepts. This is not meant to be tutorial. I'm building this live, so there's going to be mistakes, and it's also not going to be compact by any means. So to start this, I'm going to build the flying machines. I've also already done the bottom, but that doesn't really matter. Not important to what we're doing. So first you're going to want to build a worm like that, layer of blocks. Then 2 blocks above that you're going to build a row of observers, and observers facing down here. And a row of sticky pistons here, and then a row of normal pistons facing down into them to create a second worm. And for this, we're going to first build a layer of redstone at the top here to power these top pistons. Then another layer right down here, and one more down here. Also just going to put a layer of immovable blocks here again to stop these from pushing up too much. Now I'm going to build our clocks. So here I'm just going to use an observer clock like this. So we'll have a piston right here. This will push up, pushing observers, push face into these ones up, so they're like that, and that will create the clock here which will power these lines. And in order to disable it, we're going to have this redstone dust here power that block, which will go to a hover dropper, and this will just be a fairly standard dropper timer. So we're going to put a few items in here, and when all these items, this clock here pulses faster than this hopper can return the items. So after all the items leave, it'll give a pulse detected by this observer to this top piston here and push everything back down. So we can just test it right now. Looks a bit too early. Gonna add a few more items. So we need pretty close, but and also I'm gonna add a piston here, which will serve as a block updater for this row, since it has to be butted for the final pulse. There, it traveled all the way down, so we had the right duration of it. Sometimes, if you're working with other sizes, you'll have to either put in that last pulse manually or come up with circuits which will power each of these lines at different times in order to do it. So all we have to do now is, once this returns back up, power this line right there. And on something like this, it's probably easiest to do that just with a timer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend this down a bit more and put one observer here, so this will be activated when this entire stack is pushed back down. And just from this block here, I'm going to have some delay which will go into this line here. So I'm hoping that that will be enough, but we'll probably need a bit more delay. So let's just see. Yes, it's a ton more delay. So hopefully that'll be enough. We'll see. Seems to be some other problem. Alright, so this observer here is bud powering this piston, so I'm just going to move it down a block. Like that. And this redstone here won't power this piston because it's on the slab. So let's try again. There. So that successfully gives the last pulse, which pulls this last piston line here up. So we just have to do one more thing, which is before the entire thing starts, we want to quickly pulse this line here down to push all these blocks down one block, or else our pistons up here will have to push the flying machine as well as all of these blocks here, which exceeds the push limit in most cases. So to do that, I'm just going to hook up this line to a pulse here. Actually, and this will be part of our input, so we'll give like a pulse here with an observer. Then a few ticks later we'll push this up, which will start the opening sequence. Just gonna remove that. So just gonna build a monostable here, which will activate on opening. And so here on one edge you'll activate this repeater, and on the other edge you'll activate this hopper here. This will just go down into something here which activates. So this will just activate, for closing, this will just activate this piston and push everything. And it will cause the clock here to push the worm up. So I can just test it by activating that hopper. That's closing. It's a bit long, just because there's a ton of extra pulses. And then just hook this up here. Should have opening. So you see we got our first pulse here, then the clock starts, pushes everything back down, comes up to the top, and then our last pulse pulls this piston back up here. So that's just a little example on how to build it. I hope it's helpful. I hope all the other concepts here are helpful to people who want to learn how to build doors like this, and thanks for watching.